A little over 2 years ago, I traveled to Xizang, or also known as Tibet. As we struggled to catch our breath while leaving Sejila Forest Park, a breathtaking sight unfolded before us. The peak of Nanjabawa Mountain glowing golden under the setting sun. Locals say it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience to see the peak clearly. Well, that's also where its nickname Shy Lady Mountain comes from. And seeing it bathed in gold is even rarer. So, despite the thin air, the biting cold, and the countless steps still ahead of us, we pressed on to capture that unforgettable moment. As we cheered, catching our breath, taking photos, beneath that majestic peak, an unsettling reality was also unfolding. At its base, Zelongnong Glacier, an ancient, massive glacier, was quietly melting and retreating. This altered the landscape. Researchers have found a large valley forming in its wake, triggering mudslides and rockfalls. And Zelongnong isn't alone. In this part of Xizang, the southeastern part, is home to thousands of glaciers, many of which are melting rapidly, leading to an increase in natural disasters such as glacier collapse. I'm Fei Fei, and welcome to another episode of Climate Watch. This week is a milestone for glaciers under the UN framework. March the 21st marks the very first World Day for Glaciers, followed by the World Water Day on March the 22nd, which this year highlights glacier preservation. It all aligns with 2025 being the International Year for Glacier Preservation. With glaciers in the spotlight, we're turning our attention to these silent yet fragile giants shaping our planet's future. And to better understand these changes on the Qinghai-Xizang Plateau, I spoke with Ding Minghu. He's the head of the Institute of Tibetan Plateau and Polar Meteorology at the Chinese Academy of Meteorological Sciences. With nearly 20 years of experience studying glaciers here in China, he provided us key insights into these shifts. And I do want to put a disclaimer before we go. My conversation with Ding was originally in Chinese, and the English voice you'll hear in this episode has been generated with the help of AI technology.
Our report mainly focuses on glacier collapse disasters in the southeastern Xizang. Over the past few years, we've observed a rising number of glacier-related disasters across the Qinghai-Xizang Plateau, including collapses. These events have had a significant impact on lives, infrastructure, and economic activities.
The report he referenced was his latest research presented at the Dagu Glacier International Academic Summit Forum in Chengdu, where scientists from around the world gathered under the call to let glacier cool. Ding Minghu's study focused on disasters linked to melting glaciers in southeastern Xizang, and he shared some specific examples.
In 2018, a glacier collapse occurred in the Stongpu River Basin, near the big bend of the Yarlung-Zangbo River. The ice mass and moraine tumbled into the river, completely blocking the river. As a result, the water level rose rapidly, posing a severe threat to villages and infrastructure upstream, and about 6,000 people had to be evacuated. Fortunately, the blockage eventually collapsed on its own, preventing major casualties. However, it still caused significant economic losses due to extensive relocation efforts.
And this disaster raised concerns also in neighboring countries.
The blockage of the Yarlung-Zangbo River made downstream countries very anxious. If the water level had continued rising without release, it could have led to catastrophic flooding. A similar event happened in 2021 in India, where a glacier collapse in Chamali triggered a mudslide that destroyed a hydropower station or a dam, resulting in over 200 casualties.
He noted a key reason for this is human expansion into previously uninhabited areas.
Economic activities, construction projects, and tourism in southeastern Xizang are increasing. More people are moving into areas that were once no man's land. The closer human settlements are to glaciers, the greater the potential impact of these disasters.
To mitigate these risks, researchers are using advanced technologies to identify high-risk areas. In his latest paper, Ding's team found that 8 basins face extreme risks, threatening 85 residential areas, 130 roads, and 50 rivers. And tracking these hazards is a challenge, especially given the remoteness of the region.
很多冰崩是不会被人击到的，因为没有影响到你的生活。那有没有一种手段能够把这些
Many ice collapses go unnoticed because they don't directly affect human settlements. But how do we identify regions currently unrecorded yet posing significant danger? What if in the future people move there or a road is built in an unsafe zone? Our goal is to use new scientific methods to assess glacier collapse risks before disasters strike.
找到这冰崩的高风险区域。
Machine learning plays a crucial role in predicting glacier collapse using factors like temperature, precipitation, and seismic activity. Understanding these risks is vital for developing climate adaptation strategies.
咱们做研究最主要还是保护咱们自己人类哈，创造更美好的生活。
Our primary focus is on protecting human lives and creating safer living environments. Glacier collapses in remote, uninhabited regions have little immediate impact on us. However, glaciers follow cyclical movements. If the terrain is favorable and climate conditions shift, collapse frequency can rise. Identifying such high-risk zones early helps us guide development and settlement away from dangerous areas.
On a broader scale, glacier studies can also contribute to water resources management.
咱全中国的大江大河，大部分都是起源于青藏高原地区、长江、黄河等等。
The Qinghai-Xizang Plateau is the source of China's major rivers like the Yangtze and Yellow rivers. As glaciers shrink, the entire East Asian monsoon system could be affected. Studies show that even snow cover changes in spring on the plateau influence summer rainfall patterns in China.
甚至是全中国的夏季的一些降水。就比如说，我们研究这个祁连山的冰川。
For example, when we studied the glaciers in the Qilin Mountains and their runoff patterns, we predicted water availability for the next few decades. This data helps local governments regulate water use, ensuring sustainability for agriculture and industry. Over-extraction could lead to ecological disasters, even desertification.
农业用多少水？如果你过度开采，那可能将来就会造成重大的生态灾害，甚至造成荒漠化。
Also, China's annual flood forecasts already incorporate snow cover changes on the plateau.
其实，在国家气候中心对于咱们
At the National Climate Center, their annual precipitation forecast for the flood season has already included snow cover data from the Qinghai-Xizang Plateau.
But more direct and upfront impacts are felt by locals. There are some short-term benefits brought by a warming climate. Ding Minghu confirmed that locals have observed expanding lakes and greener landscapes. Stories I've also heard myself from the locals.
就像这个洪水一样，它会带来大量的这个冰川沉积物。
Like floods, ice collapses transport large amounts of glacial sediment, enriching the soil. This makes the land more fertile for grazing. That's why ice collapse zones often have good pastures afterward.
区域或冰川流出跃动区域，它往往都是有很好的草场。
But these shifts come with long-term consequences.
总的来，其实对于青藏高原人民本身来讲，也是弊大于利的。
Overall, the changes do more harm than good. The region's lakes have grown substantially, adding hundreds of billions of cubic meters of water. The warming rate here is more than double the global average, 0.4 degrees Celsius per decade in southeastern Xizang. This warming, combined with increased precipitation and melting permafrost, is reshaping the plateau's ecosystem.
就是由于它变暖，积雪和冻土也发生消融。你知道，积雪和冻土都是水啊，它整个温度变化，它影响的是整个生态。
This could lead to shrinking land areas, forcing humans, animals, and plants migrate to higher altitude areas. The plateau is quietly melting not only glaciers, but also snow cover and permafrost. Soil that's been frozen for decades, if not centuries. And permafrost melt threatens infrastructure, destabilizing roads and railways.
如果在多年冻土区域，它其实不需要太多的这个工程措施。
Permafrost is a stable foundation for roads and railways, but if it transitions to seasonal frozen soil, it melts each summer and refreezes in winter, destabilizing foundations. This poses major challenges for infrastructure in the region.
那么就会使得这个交通啊等等运输能力都会发生变化。那些电力也是一样的。
While efforts like covering up glaciers to shield sun radiation exist, Ding is skeptical.
对，因为它这个冰川有旅游价值，他们这样做也是有意义的。
Places like the Dagu Glacier has tourism value. Such efforts are still meaningful because they contribute to the local economy. But more importantly, the entire Third Pole region has over 90,000 glaciers. Given their sheer number, it is impossible to cover each one. Many are in uninhabited areas or deep within high-altitude mountain ranges, where human intervention is extremely difficult. Their total area is also vast. Beyond slowing climate change and reaching peak carbon emissions sooner, there are no truly better solutions.
以及达到这个碳排放的拐点更早一些之外，没有太好的办法。
To put the problem on a broader scope, he noted while the Qinghai-Xizang glaciers are melting rapidly, other regions in the world are losing their ice even faster.
最快的是还是低纬区域，因为低纬的海拔区域，比如说安第斯山等等这样的一些。
Because low-latitude regions, such as the Andes, experience rapid warming and precipitation changes. Their glaciers are melting the fastest. Following them, glaciers in Europe, Canada, and the United States, essentially across North America, are also retreating at a faster rate. The melting and even disappearance of these glaciers have already had a significant impact on local ecosystems, drawing the attention of both governments and the public.
已经对当地的生态的影响是非常非常大，已经引起了当地政府和民众的注意。
Before we go, I asked Ding Minghu on the long-term outlook. What would happen to these glaciers on the Qinghai-Xizang Plateau 100 years later?
未来100年的话，青藏高原。其实不是一个乐观的。对于我来讲
，Over the next century, the future of the Qinghai-Xizang Plateau is not optimistic. If we meet the Paris Agreement's goals, about 40% of the plateau's ice reserves will be lost by 2100. But if emissions continue unchecked, up to 70% could disappear.
70%左右的都会消失或处于即将消失的一个阶段。
如果比如说青藏高原的冰川消融达到70%甚至更高，对于我们这个意味着是什么呢？
意味着就是最直观的意味着
The most direct impact is an increase in extreme weather events and disasters. Droughts and floods will coexist, while relatively stable and comfortable weather conditions will become less frequent, something that may not be good news for humanity.
Ding and many scientists remain cautious. And despite of that, they expand on their research to understand glaciers' role in Earth's system, climate interactions, and also air pollution. But as 2024 has already been marked as the warmest year on record, exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, we must prepare for a less comfortable future. I don't want to end this episode on a gloomy note, so I want to leave you with a challenge. Find the glacier closest to you. Learn its name, its history, and how it's changing. A huge thank you to Ding Minghu of the Chinese Academy of Meteorological Sciences, and thank you for listening to this episode of Climate Watch. If you have any questions about climate change, suggestions for future episodes, or just thoughts you want to share, feel free to reach out to fei.fei@cgtn.com, fei.fei@cgtn.com. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform, or you can also find me on Substack at Rivers and Mountains. Until next time.